Good day, great day, everyone. I just want to talk to you for a minute. It's Latanya, Prophetess Latanya Roche. We're here today, and we're going to be talking about psychoanalytics, the psychoanalytic theory regarding regarding sorry, but regarding Sigmund Freud and his analogy on the psychoanalytic theory, which actually includes talking about early childhood development, the different stages and phases that we go through, and why it is that we actually have different concepts and precepts as we grow up and go into adulthood. So I'll just read you a little bit of what this is speaking in reference to, and I'll try not to go into too much detail regarding what it's saying here. It says that Freud says that the Freud says that the mind comprises conscious and unconscious parts. The world as we know it is stored in our conscious mind. So the world as we know it is stored in our conscious mind, meaning our reality is stored in our conscious mind. The things that we can see, touch, taste, hear, smell, these things are stored in our conscious mind. But he says that the unconscious mind is behind a closed door, which we usually cannot penetrate. And you guys may recall me saying back here just a few weeks ago that, the Most High was talking to me about a door when it comes to the children and the door and the closet, the door. There was no door there, meaning everything that was going on, there was no barrier in between the conscious and the unconscious. So the different things that we were dealing with, the different things that the children deal with, there was actually an open door there, nothing to close that off, meaning everything was running rampant, meaning that there was an imbalance when you really come up to it. It says the unconscious mind is behind a door, a closed door, which we usually cannot penetrate, meaning we usually cannot open this door. But there, I'll go into it in a little bit, just a little bit more. It says it is filled with feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that are unpleasant or so disturbing that they are pushed out of consciousness. Remember, we talked about how we need to go back and we need to look at these different things that happened in our childhood and in different stages on the timeline of our life to find out what's going on with us and why we're actually dealing with the different things that we are currently dealing with as far as emotional behavior, as far as health issues. All of these different things are things that are stored in the unconscious mind where the door is supposed to be, where these things cannot come back through to actually bother us. So these are the things that we actually need to do by way of therapeutic measures to go back and look at these things and pull them out so that we can be washed clean, so to speak. When we get saved and we go back and we get baptized, we're washed by the Holy Spirit, by the blood of Jesus. We are washed and we are clean so that we can come forth clean, so that we can deal with the past issues, so that we can deal with the past hurts, so that we can actually have clarity and we can actually move forward. But these things are things that have to be done with someone who is well versed in this. But I'm just talking about it because I want everybody to understand that the things that we are facing in our adulthood really is not something that has happened in our adulthood, but it's actually something that is has happened in times past, and we have put it in the back of our mind in that unconscious space, and it is a place that we actually need to clean out so that we can move forward in a clean and healthy way. um, as far as childhood traumas, child molestation, verbal abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. These different types of things are the things that we actually need to deal with, and understand that these things are not actually our fault. We really did not readily do anything to be the recipient of what it is that we have actually gone through in life. So just going to keep on reading here and give you a bit more, and I'll run it back for you. It says the unconscious mind is behind a closed door, which we usually cannot penetrate. It is filled with feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that are unpleasant or so disturbing that they are pushed out of consciousness. The conscious mind influences behavior in ways that we may not be aware of and may send messages to the conscious mind through dreams. For example, a person may have an unexplained fear of cats and they don't really understand why. The person's unconscious mind contains a terrifying memory as an infant of being nearly suffocated by a cat lying on its face. We think that the cat just goes there and it is sucking the breath out of it, because this is the concept that we were given, and which is why cats could not be around babies, because they didn't have all of the clarity regarding what it is that the cat actually did. It was looked at as an evil spirit, and that it would actually just go and breathe out of the breath of the baby, and the baby would not have oxygen to breathe. But in all actuality, as explained here, is because the cat would actually sit on the baby's face and just lay down on the baby's face, and the baby would end up being suffocated. But that would be terrifying for someone who parent may have called the cat away, and the cat did not suffocate them. So they would have that in their unconscious memory, right? So the person's unconscious mind contains a terrifying memory of that as an infant. The memory is hidden, but the fear remains, right? So this is the unconscious fear. I don't know why I don't like cats. I don't know why I don't like dogs. I don't know why I cannot touch a spoon. I have no idea. Now, I'm just using these things as example to give you an example so you can kind of understand and comprehend. I don't know why. I cannot deal with certain things. It's because it's something that's buried in the subconscious, in the unconscious mind, that has created a space of fear or terror within us, and we experience that and we know not why. Okay? But the fear remains influencing unconscious behavior, although the general idea of a conscious and unconscious has endured. Like most of Freud's theories, there is actually no consistent empirical evidence to lend support. But we understand that we are fearful of some things. We understand that some things are hurt, pain, these different things are buried in the back of our mind. Especially like after a bad breakup, for those of us who are adults, after a traumatic incident, maybe like if you're driving a car and you're in an accident, and all of a sudden you cannot drive for a while. You don't want to get behind the wheel. You don't want to drive. You don't want to do anything, because there's this fear in the back of your mind that this thing is going to happen again. So it's that type of situation where you kind of put it in your mind because we block things off because we want to feel safe. And then when it's ultimately said and done, this is the reason why. Okay. So we need to understand that a lot of things that we actually deal with in our adulthood, as far as horrific things, being terrified about particular things, don't want to get on an elevator, can't stand heights, don't want to be in small spaces. These are because of things that happened in our past that we put in the back of our mind, maybe because one, we did not understand it and it just moved itself there, or because we never wanted to deal with that ever again. And we just put it in the back of our mind, and I'll tell you that it's not good to just place things in the back of your mind. You need to actually learn how to work through them, because of the simple fact those things that are placed in the back of the mind, they'll actually sit back there. And because in the back of the mind, the unconscious place in the mind, that place in the mind also deals with bodily functions. And the places where the things that we leave sitting in our unconscious mind can actually sit and rest on an organ, can actually sit and rest on a lung, can actually sit and rest on a breast. I rebuke it right now. It can actually sit and rest on a knee joint. It can sit and rest on, your ear gate. It can sit and rest in different places, which is why we have to be mindful of ourselves as we go through these different phases in life, and we are affected by hurt, pain, trauma, however it is that it happened, to actually deal with that experience and not just put it in our unconscious mind. where we're not thinking about it. It goes on here to say that he theorized that our early childhood experiences and memories play a central role in personality development and its inherent problems. Now, I will tell you now that a lot of things that happened when we were children, and I'm going to touch on this because it is a place that is real. Okay, it is something that is real, and we have all actually experienced it. And if it's looking weird to you, I'm looking in two different cameras. Okay, but the things that happened to us as children, the things that we experienced, some things that we did when we became teenagers, some things that we do while we're adults, the different problems that we have, different sexual experiences and encounters that some of us have, it all stems from adulthood. And I'll tell you myself, walls actually can be paper thin, and with a wall being paper thin, and let's just say your room is next to your parents or close by your parents, if they're having their own date night, and we'll just keep it that way, then you may actually hear what is going on during their date night. And by hearing, that stimulates things in the mind. So you may see where these things are stimulating, and you may find that you have a overly um, active sex drive, and this is because of the things that you heard as a child. Just as a child, you are in the house and the walls are paper thin, and the parents may actually be having a disagreement, and the parents are having a disagreement, and you're hearing this, and whichever side it is that you're on, you're becoming enraged by what it is that's going on, and it's out of control. And because you were a little one, you didn't have control either, so you just had to listen, and it stimulated places in your mind, putting you in a space of not having self-control. So we need to understand that. And the one who um, didn't have the capability, being the child, did not have the control, means that they would probably usually become an aggressive person, and become, enraged, and not being capable of handling their anger, managing their anger at all, managing their emotions at all. It's not their fault. It's because of the things that they heard that are buried in the unconscious mind. It deals with personality development and its inherent problems. When you see people that are kind of closed off, shut off, because there's something that's closed off and shut off because of an emotion, something that was triggered that could not be turned off because there was no control. No one came back and explained. There was nothing, that they could readily, hold on to, that would keep them grounded and keep them from going into that space of lacking self-control, being in a space of being enraged. It's not their fault. They have to learn how to come out of that. Okay, not that's not that is not a hall pass, to say that it's okay, because if you're in that type of a situation, then you should definitively get out, and they should absolutely get help expeditiously, because it can be detrimental. Okay, so based on the causes that he encountered, Freed developed the idea that during the first 5 years, 5 or 6 years of our lives, we go through several psychosexual stages. Several psychosexual stages between the 0 to 5 to 6 years old. We go through several different psychosexual stages, meaning, again, the things that we heard while mommy and daddy were having a date night, and we were supposed to be asleep, but because the walls are paper thin, we can actually hear what these things are. The mind thinks, it stimulates things in the mind. So we actually had these different encounters. So we went through these different sexual phases in our mind. Okay, he felt that gratification shifted during these stages from the mouth, oral stages, verbal stages, oral stages, to the anus and bladder, anal stage, and then to the genitals, um, phallic stage. Should any one of these early stages either be over or under gratified, the person can develop a fixation and become locked into the stage of development. Hypersexual active people, someone who cannot stop stepping out, someone who cannot stop watching pornographic films, someone who cannot control their urges. It was in the developmental phases of their being, and they are not actually really responsible. A child at these ages are not responsible for themselves. It's something that happens. The Word of God says that man perishes for a lack of knowledge. Okay? Man perishes for a lack of knowledge. All right? And we should readily understand that. So it's time for us to actually become gainfully knowledgeable and have a place in a space of understanding what is actually transpiring and causing the degradation within the community. And what we see is people going to different, things, drugs and so on and so forth. I had to speak to a spoon the other night and tell the spoon that it will never be utilized again for a drug addict to actually heat up heroin to do drugs to cover up the pain from the childhood scars that they actually experience and feel as if they cannot get away from. Okay? By the grace of God, I speak deliverance right now. It says that they'll get a fixation and become locked into the stage of development. For example, someone who received too much or too little mothering in the oral stage may act immature and dependent. Okay? They may act immature and dependent, okay, because they lacked mothering in the oral stage. You may see this a lot in children who are may have had to go into CPS. Someone who may have had to be in an orphanage to wait and become adopted. You may see these things, which is one of the reasons why I am pro-choice when it comes to women's rights, because you don't know the different things that people have to go through. Children have to go through these developmental stages in order to become solidified in life, and then they experience breakdown in their lives. And the first thing that man's law want to do is place everyone in a prison cell when that is not definitively the place for everyone to be. We need to work through it so that we can get through it, okay? So it goes on to talk about, especially towards women who represent mother figures. I'll read it to you again. For example, someone who receives too much or too little mothering in the oral stages may act immature and dependent, especially towards women who represent mother figures. I've actually encountered that myself, where I've had to tell someone, listen, I cannot be in your head and in your bed at the same time, because I cannot be your mother and fill this role as well, because there has to be a separation between the two. But again, because the walls were paper thin, and there was a lack of some things, but a lack of an understanding about some things, but the senses were tantalated, and those things went on, then there's no way to actually gain a better understanding of it. Okay, so according to Freed, people fixated at the oral stage will be likely to engage in excessive oral activities like smoking, drinking, overeating, and biting nails. That's according to Sigmund Freud. Okay? Another of Freud's enduring contributions to the idea that an individual's personality is composed of three parts: the ID, the superego, and the ego. The ID, because I want to hold my head up a bit so while I'm reading, my head won't be so low. The ID, which resides in the unconscious mind, The ID resides in the unconscious mind. The way that we identify ourselves resides in the unconscious mind, and it is driven only, it is driven by only one thing: the desire for personal pleasure. Someone who's selfish. Me. For instance, if you have an urge to satisfy your hunger but have no cash, you may simply steal a hot dog from a street vendor. The superego, which mostly resides in the unconsciousness, is the source of what we call our conscious. The superego, which mostly resides in the unconscious, is the source of what we call our conscious. The superego, it resides in the unconscious, but it is the source of what we call our conscious mind. Okay? So the superego has the source of our conscious mind. Okay? It is the part of our mind that tells us what is right and what is wrong, including social norms. What is normal? You'll see someone doing something that is ridiculous, that you would think that was very appalling. But because it resides in their conscious, well, their superego, their unconscious mind, which is the portal that opens up into what is known as the conscious mind, which means that it sends, the superego sends messages to the conscious. Okay? And you'll see them doing something ridiculous, but it's a part of their norm because it's something that they've seen. And their unconscious mind is talking to what is the conscious mind. The superego wants to obey standards. If we don't, then we may feel guilty or anxious. Standards, whatever standards it has set up in here, it wants to obey whatever commands it is that is in here. That's why reteaching, teaching and reteaching is very important. The superego would tell the ID not to steal the hot dog because it is wrong and you might get arrested. The third part of the personality is the ego, which resides in the conscious mind. The ego resides in the conscious mind. So the superego is in the unconscious mind, but it sends messages to the conscious mind, which is where the ego lives. The role of the ego is that of a mediator. It balances the demands of the ID with the demands of the superego. When you really want that hot dog, the ego decides to go to the ATM, withdraw some cash, and then go back to purchase it, thus satisfying both ID and superego. But it doesn't tell you here what someone who doesn't have the money would do. Well, it actually does, because it says that it would actually steal it. But that was coming from the superego. It says that it would steal it because it doesn't have the money. Right? Right? Freud believed that the mind tries to protect itself from frustration and severe distress, such as war, rape, death, and so on. He believed, and I can tell you, that the mind will protect itself. The mind will protect itself. from being harmed by anything. It's like it will not let anything into its field, if that makes any sense. The hedge of protection is like the door, when you're talking about the ID, the door that's there that's not to be penetrated. It will not allow anything to come into it and remain. It's almost like a canceling out of things. This is not of me, so it cannot stay with me. You see? So it'll cast down things, it'll pull down things that are not supposed to be there. All right, it goes on to say that he believed that we have several techniques for this, which he calls defense mechanisms. Right? Here are the defense mechanisms, a few of the common ones, I'll say. Displacement. Here we cannot safely express negative feelings to the person responsible, so we unconsciously transfer our anger to someone safer, right? And I experience this quite often. And I was just talking about this. For me, it's like the mirror effect. Um, and, taking out things on someone who is undeserving of what that is, but because they cannot actually readily contact or cannot go to this particular person who is the culprit, they'll take it out on someone else who is in front of them. And you'll find this even when they are the culprit. They're frustrated about something and they cannot get it out and take it out on themselves. So you'll see where they actually take it out on someone else, i.e., possibly you, whomever it is that's standing in front of them. Displacement, displaced anger, displaced frustration, okay? Displaced sexual behavior, all right? And the list can go on and on. Compensation is the next one. Here we try to uncover and here we try to overcome feelings of inferiority in one area by excelling in another area. And I'll tell you about this one. For me, it's the short people, the little people, with the tall, with the big syndrome. People who are really short, and they are always um, they're trying to respond in a big way to kind of ward off whatever someone else may be coming at them with. I had an experience with someone who was much shorter than I am, and I have this experience quite often. But someone who was much shorter than I was, and she always wanted to battle. Like she always wanted to, you know what I'm saying? She was with it. She wanted to go at it all the time, and I had to stop her one time and explain to her, listen, you have to find respect for yourself in order to get respect from other people. You have to respect them and you have to respect yourself. It goes both ways. As you give respect to yourself, you're giving respect to other people. With certain things that you will not tolerate, meaning you know that they shall not tolerate either. But compensation, they will overcompensate, and the least little thing could actually trigger them because they feel as if they're being put in a position to be challenged. Let me hurry up because I only have a few moments before this thing actually stops on me. Rationalization. Here we look for an acceptable reason to justify our thinking or behavior. For example, we don't want to study at night but tell others we need to get more sleep so that we don't get sick. Rationalization. Making an excuse, right? Okay. So, psychoanalytical theory has given us a strong platform for understanding a whole range of common human behavior. Regardless of the lack of empirical support, Freud's theories remains historically significant. Many of the terms that he or his followers coined to describe human behavior are now a part of a popular language, such as unconscious. And what I came up with, what the Most High actually gave me for unconscious, is the part that you're not thinking about. Fixation is to focus. Ego is a strong man. Defense is the gate. Remember the fence all around us, the hedge of protection. Repression, force, pressure, making of restraint, prevention, action of subduing someone or something by force. Rationalization is reasoning why, how, that sort of a thing. Okay? So I just wanted to bring that forth so we can kind of understand how these different things happen, why some people go through different things and have major challenges in life, when there should be no major challenges, when everyone should be moving, so easily. But there is this thing called therapy. There is a church that actually does group therapy every, I want to say, Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not actually it may be a different day during the week. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But there's group therapy where everyone sits and have conversations, and there's different places that you can actually go into, and things can be broken down for you even more. You'll have a broader band of support, that sort of a thing. So I just wanted to bring it forth to make us aware as a people of what is actually transpiring and why we experience the things that we experience the way that we experience them, and why things carry over so far into our lives, and things that we do not understand why these things are there. All right, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment. Please feel free to inbox. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability. If I can't answer it, then I will send you in the right direction. All right, it's Prophetess Latanya with Latanya Roche Healing Hands, Heart of a Rose, for the Miss Copper Rose community and the surrounding communities as well. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I hope you guys have a beautiful and an amazing day. Love, peace, bless.